What's up, Achievers? Lauren Pack here, and I want to take you step by step through the progressions to achieving your first push-up. Push-ups are something that no matter what modality you do in terms of fitness, if you do boot camp or yoga or CrossFit, they're always going to be a staple. Push-ups are always going to be in your program in some way, and they can be a real source of frustration for people who feel like they're always stuck having to do the kneeling variation and feel like they never really progress or never really get themselves to the point of doing kneeling push-ups to doing push-ups on their feet. And so today, what I want to really talk you through is how to bridge that gap and how to make sure that you feel more comfortable and confident getting to that first push-up safely and effectively. So oftentimes when someone struggles with a full body push-up, the recommendation is to just drop down to their knees. But as I just mentioned, and as you've probably noticed, that isn't always going to then get you to doing a full body push-up. So something that we like instead of just kneeling push-ups is an incline push-up where your hands are elevated. And the reason that we like that is because you're still needing to keep your full body in alignment as you lower yourself down into that push-up, as opposed to when your knees are down, we tend to kind of break up the lines and you kind of take half of your body out of the equation, and it really doesn't mimic the full body push-up the way that an incline push-up will. So we really like using incline push-ups, and we like to use them preferably on a squat rack with a barbell, and I'll talk you through why that's our preference. So the reason that we like to use a squat rack for our incline push-ups is because you'll see all the different notches on the squat rack and basically the ability to raise or lower the bar in very small increments. And the reason we really like that is it allows for a very gradual progression from an incline down to the floor. So when we're doing incline push-ups, we're just basically taking gravity out of the equation a little bit. So the higher the bar is, the easier it's going to be. The lower the bar is, closer to the floor, the harder it's going to be because the gravitational pull is going to be more intense. All right, so we want to start at a level where you feel pretty comfortable and confident with your form, and then week to week we're going to add some repetitions, and then month to month we're going to lower the bar closer and closer to the floor until you finally get yourself down onto the ground. Okay, so I walked you through why we prefer incline push-ups as opposed to kneeling push-ups in terms of progressing toward a full body push-up. Now I want to talk to you about the form that you want to use for those incline push-ups to make sure that you're really just nailing really good form from the start. So I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about your hand position, your body alignment, and your elbow position. Okay, so let's talk about hand position. So when you're setting up, we typically like to recommend a little bit wider than shoulder width. If you're too close, we tend to see shoulders rounding forward. If you're too wide, we tend to see elbows flaring out, and both of those things can cause some issues with the shoulders. It just isn't as comfortable or as strong. So we want to think about just a little bit wider than shoulder width. Sometimes barbells have this knurling, this kind of rougher part of the bar, and that tends to be a good location to place your hands. Now the next thing I want to talk about is your alignment. This is going to be the most important thing throughout this whole progression from incline to lower and lower to the floor, is we're always trying to make sure that we're maintaining this ribs over hips alignment. So as I'm going through the push-up, you're going to see that everything stays the same. From my head to my heels, I'm in one nice straight line, and I maintain that line as I lower and as I press back up. The things that we see all the time are hips sagging, so kind of arching at the back, or butt sticking up as we lower down. And you're just ingraining poor patterning that's not going to translate to a strong push-up when you get to the floor. The push-up is an upper body exercise conventionally, that's what people think about, but it's actually really a core exercise. You're having to control your entire torso with your core in order to have that strong push-up. So it's really important that your alignment is one of your biggest priorities. And one way that you can start to practice this is to do it without gravity working against you at all. So just from a standing position, you can place your hands on your hips, and we can kind of get into a less ideal position. So sticking your butt out, letting your ribs flare, and arching your back. And now from here, we're just going to tilt your hips under until you feel that your ribs settle right over your hips, and you're in this nice alignment. You feel your glutes squeeze a little bit, you might feel your abs turn on a little bit, and then we're just going to go back into that arch. And then tuck and get into that good straight alignment. So really it's thinking about the ribs sitting directly over the pelvis and everything's nice and straight. All right, so once you've felt that adjustment and figured out how to get yourself into alignment in a standing position, then when you get yourself set up on the bar, we want to think about the same thing. So oftentimes when we get set up, we see this arched position with the butt sticking out. We want to think about tilting under, squeezing those glutes, and then getting in a nice alignment right from the top. And then the third thing, like I said in the beginning, was your elbow position. So I kind of mentioned this with the hand placement. We don't want our elbows too close to our body or too far away from us. We're aiming for basically a 45-degree angle. But because you're not gonna take out your protractor and make sure that you're in an exact right angle, I have a tip for you that's gonna make this happen a little bit more naturally. So once you get your hand placement and you've got your alignment set, what we wanna do is think about bending the bar. So you're gripping the bar here and we're thinking about bending it outward this way, just slightly. Nothing too aggressive or egregious, just a little bit of a bend on that bar. And doing that is going to point your elbows back around 45 degrees. So it's just gonna naturally get you into a stronger position. It's also going to get your lats engaged, and it's just gonna get you into a good, strong, solid bottom position. Okay, I said 3 tips, but it's actually 4. I have one more for you, which is where your body should hit the bar when you're lowering yourself down. A big mistake that we see with the incline push-up is the hand placement's good, alignment's good, but then when people start to go down, they might hit like really high up on their chest. And you can see that my arm angle just isn't very strong. All right, or they might hit like their belly button way too low. So what we want to think about is hitting the bar with your sternum. So basically getting to a point where your feet are positioned so that when your elbows come back at that 45-degree position, your sternum hits the bar and then you press back up. So it's all just about foot placement. So if you're too far back, you're going to end up hitting too high. If you're too far forward, you're gonna hit too low. All right, if you're somebody who wears a sports bra, it's nice and convenient. You can just aim for the bottom of your sports bra line. So basically, if you've watched our pull-up video from previously, you've seen our philosophy about how to gradually, progressively increase the difficulty or increase reps before moving to a thinner band. So before basically changing levels. So in this case for push-ups, we want to gradually increase our repetitions at the same level week to week. And then at a certain point, when you get to maybe 10 to 12 reps at that level, then it's time to drop down to the next level. And so we're just dropping typically 1 notch on the squat rack at a time, or if you're feeling like your progress is happening a little quicker, you might drop 2 notches at a time. Now, if you don't have access to a squat rack while you're practicing your push-ups, we can do something slightly different, which is have an elevated surface that is always the same height, and then you gradually elevate your feet. So you have your hands up on a bench or a box or a table, and then you gradually make your feet come up higher, which it accomplishes the same thing, basically decreases the angle that you are to the floor. All right, so let's say it's been a few weeks or months, however long it's taken, and you've gotten to the lowest setting that your rack will go to, and you're feeling really confident in your push-ups at this setting. You're pretty much close to the ground, but sometimes it's still a big jump to go from that incline straight to the floor and going all the way down. So what we like to do is take a yoga block or an RX pad, something that has a little bit of an elevation, and we like to start with going partial push-ups. So just basically practicing now from the floor, but going only to a certain point and then back up. All right, and the goal here and the reason that we do this is we're thinking about alignment. Again, it's one of the most important things like we talked about here, and making sure that nothing through your torso changes. Oftentimes when we go straight down to the floor from that incline, we go all the way down and we see this start to happen where the upper body comes up and the lower body follows. And so what we want to do is just take your time and not rush to the floor and start to have those compensations happen, and instead elevate the floor a little bit and make that a shorter range of motion, and then gradually you progress from something like a block to something like an RX pad and eventually all the way to the floor. This is also a great time to incorporate kneeling push-ups. So like I said in the beginning, it's not the go-to strategy for us for accomplishing a full body push-up, but it is a really good way to bridge the gap from something like that very low incline to the floor, because you are practicing that full range of motion with your upper body when you're kneeling. So you can maybe have one day a week where you're doing the partial range of motion down to a block. The other day a week you're doing a kneeling push-up where you're still working that full range of motion. All right, so now I want to talk about some technique tips for once you get to the floor, because if you've been doing it on a barbell, you've been used to gripping the bar here, and now you have your hands on the floor, fingers spread out, which is just a little bit different, and we have some different techniques to get you into a good solid position. So again, with the hand placement, we're thinking about just a little wider than shoulder width. Oftentimes, if you do push-ups on a yoga mat, we tend to just scoot our hands in to fit to the edges of the mat, but again, that keeps those elbows in tight and sometimes causes those shoulders to round forward. So instead of being directly under your shoulders, we tend to go just a little bit wider, and we really like to spread your fingers out. So your hands have now become your base of support on the floor, and if you keep your fingers together, you're gonna have a thinner base of support, and if you spread your fingers out, you're gonna have a wider base of support, and you're just gonna be in a stronger position from the start. So spread out those fingers. Then we get ourselves into our good alignment, like we've been talking about. And then instead of breaking the bar, because you don't have it anymore, now you can think about corkscrewing your hands. So you kind of grip the floor and then just slightly corkscrew out. We're actually not moving your fingers, so it's more of an intention. So from here, we're thinking about gripping and corkscrewing out. That's just enough to turn your elbows back at 45 degrees and then pressing the floor away. So that's the progression that we have for you for push-ups. You probably are feeling like that's very simple, almost too simple, which is true. We are typically not trying to jump to all of these different strategies or different drills to try to make things fancy and happen faster than they should. It really is just about patience and practice. And if you have a solid plan where you're just working week to week to week, progressing each time you hit the gym, you're going to get there eventually by just practicing really good technique and practicing consistently. So really, it's just about going gradually lower and lower and lower, getting to the floor, partial reps and kneeling reps, and then hitting the floor for that full body push-up. Now, of course, if you want to accelerate your progress with push-ups, it makes sense to have them just be a part of an overarching strength program. So instead of just working on push-ups, making sure that you're doing things like squats and deadlifts and chest presses and rows and just exercises that get you stronger overall. Push-ups are really just such a total body exercise. And then of course, making sure that you're incorporating core exercises like dead bugs and planks where you're really gaining strength in that solid alignment that we were talking about. So we want to make sure that this is part of a comprehensive strength training program, and that's really going to help to make that progress happen a lot faster for you. All right, so that is all I have for you today. Good luck on your push-up journey. I'm excited to be a part of it. And if you are more of an auditory learner, we actually have a full podcast episode on this whole same concept as well, so we'll link that below. Make sure you subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks like this. And until next time, sweat out, happiness in.